Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Horsepower Obsessed. Today we get a couple more spy shots of the C8, courtesy of Car and Driver. These spy shots are a little bit different though. Let's talk about it. Alright guys, so the first thing you're going to notice as soon as I put this picture up here is there is no spoiler on the back of this car. It is literally completely flat across the back bumper and the back engine cover. Now it is interesting though, if you look very closely, you can see the outline of where the spoiler should be. So this tells me one of maybe two things. One, maybe GM removed it for some purpose on this particular test mule, or two, we're looking at a car that's going to have active aero, and right now the spoiler is not activated for speed reasons or whatever it may be. That's probably wishful thinking because I highly doubt that the base model is going to have any kind of active aero on it, and odds are very good this model we're looking at right here in this picture is likely the base model. It is interesting to see this particular mule showing up in pictures that were just taken though. Car and Driver posted these pictures as of today, and they were taken just within the last couple days. Now this car looks exactly the same as the cars we saw months ago running around on the Nürburgring. We've seen the car in greater detail than this. If you look at especially the headlights and the taillights, they are not being shown as much as they were even in that New York event. They have them much more covered up, much more camoed over, and have shown no detail on them. Now, back a couple months ago, that was no big deal because the car hadn't really even been talked about much yet. Now that we have official confirmation that that car is coming, we're seeing it a little less camoed over, and we've seen some of the taillights and some of the headlights, things that are really starting to put the car in perspective. But this one has it all covered up just like it was a couple months ago. Another interesting thing is the exhaust tips. If you look closely at the rear end, you can see there's only two coming out, and they're sticking out about 4 inches from the bumper, whereas the other ones that we've seen actually show 2 per side for 4 altogether, and they don't stick out anywhere near that much. This typically is a sign of GM trying to keep the amount of noise that the exhaust is making down. So on certain racetracks, there is a noise level limit, and if it increases past that, they will actually tell you or remove you from the track. In this case, the last time I've seen something like this was whenever the C7 ZR1 was testing around the Nürburgring. They had a weird contraption attached to the exhaust tips to limit the decibels so they weren't going to get thrown out of the Nürburgring. That's what this looks like to me, but honestly, it's very strange looking, and it doesn't even look like they're on a track in this picture, so I have no idea exactly why those exhaust tips would be like that. Obviously, these cars are running around to test the limits of the car to make sure everything's going to be functional and everything's going to be ready to go for that July 18th reveal, but it's still interesting to see it like this because when I look at this car in this kind of shape, it doesn't look like it's that close to being done. Now, as I said, this looks a lot like the car we saw a couple months ago on the Nürburgring, but the camo on this car is actually quite a bit different. It has a lot of black edging around specific panels that the ones from the Nürburgring did not have. The rear glass is still covered up, so you can't see what kind of engine's in there, and it still has the little opening up at the very top for what is likely the camera feeding the rear view mirror on the inside of the car. Some of the other pictures here, you can still clearly see the targa top lines in the camo. So from the very beginning, I thought that this car was going to have a targa top just because of those very clear defined lines that have been cut into the camo. This one is of course no different. It still has those same lines very visible. One of the black lines running through the camo actually clearly defines the rear access panel. The entire rear end of the car looks like it's going to open up to give you access to the engine bay. This is a little outside of the norm for mid-engine cars. Most of the time, mid-engine cars have just the black covered panel. That would be the only part that would typically open. This one looks like the entire rear hatch is going to open, similar to how it does on the C7 Corvette, but of course with the C8, there's going to be an engine back there instead of trunk space. One other bit of information I wanted to share was the user at the midenginecorvetteforum.com, C8UR911. The same guy who has brought us some of the previous leaks I've discussed created a post talking about a few more details. He said, Without going into specifics, he had two more details that he'd like to share. First, those of you who are worried that the new rear mid-engine design will make this car unrecognizable as a Corvette, you're wrong. There's nothing to worry about. The car still screams Corvette. I have heard that conversation a lot, and I don't really specifically know what makes a car look like a Corvette, but I have heard that concern. So he is saying, don't worry about it. It's going to be a Corvette. He actually goes on to say that it even has previous recognizable styling to the C2 Corvette and C3 Corvette. He states traditionalists will be happy. Lastly, he says the side scoop. It actually curves right into the ground effect. He basically says the ground effect curves into the body and connects where the scoop curve ends. He doesn't know how else to explain it, but basically looking at it from the front, it looks like the side scoop flows right into the ground effect in one continuous motion. Now, if you guys haven't seen my previous video, I'll link it up here at the top right, but basically he is the same one that said that the front and rear renderings were pretty accurate, but the side renderings were completely wrong. He's basically saying that scoop does exist, it is going to be on the car, but it doesn't look the way it does in the renderings. Definitely interesting stuff here. I do hope he's right to an extent because the current renderings aren't really doing a whole lot for me, but every time a new one is made, it gets better and better. And honestly, the side profile of the car is the one I'm worried the most about. So I'm kind of hoping he's right. And lastly, I had someone reach out to me from one of my previous C8 videos, and he claims to be working around the new Corvette. So I asked him a couple questions. Of course, I can't give out any information about who this person was or anything like that. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but he gave me some information that I find to be pretty interesting. He said that he's been working around the new Corvette for a while and that the renderings are pretty accurate. It's not like the LaFerrari situation that I actually posted in one of my previous videos, where that car was completely unrecognizable to what it is today while they were testing it. He said it's not going to be like that with the C8. The renderings are pretty close. However, the camo is hiding some of the more fine details that really give it a nice look. He states it strikes a fine balance between sporty looks and luxury elegance. I, of course, asked him if there was anything more he could share, and he said, unfortunately, given the situation, he cannot share any kind of photographic evidence since everything's under such high security, and he doesn't want to get anybody in trouble. He does go on to say that there will be several editions of the C8 coming out over the next few years, including a Z06, a ZR1, and then a Zora. If you remember my previous videos, the C8 UR911 user on the mid-engine Corvette forum.com stated that it was either going to be a ZR1 or a Zora, that GM hadn't made up their mind yet. But this person is telling me apparently we're going to actually get both models, so a ZR1 and a Zora. I go on to ask him, of course, is there going to be a manual transmission for this car? He says no, only automatic dual clutch transmission. That's sad, but I kind of figured that was going to be the case. I asked him if he knows anything more about the additional models, the Z06, ZR1, etc. He said yes. From what he has seen, the Z06 is going to be introduced in a couple years as a hybrid model, along with an all-electric version of the C8 to compete with Tesla. He states that the ZR1 is going to have a massive LT7 twin-turbo engine, which looks like it will make north of 850 horsepower, and it should be coming out around 2024, alongside the Zora, which is the same as the ZR1, but it adds the hybrid all-wheel drive. Now, we've talked about that in the past as well. The previous person was saying that the ZR1 or Zora model would have the same engine as the Z06, only with that added hybrid all-wheel drive function. So as you can tell, a lot of these rumors are starting to at least fairly closely coincide with each other. So the further we get along with this information, the more accurate it's getting. He also states that the Zora hybrid all-wheel drive version will be more track focused with lots of active aero, making around 1,000 horsepower. Now, this is something that we've talked about a lot in the past and was rumored from very early on that one of these models was going to have 1,000 horsepower. The user from the mid-engine Corvette forum never said anything about any of the engines topping out at 1,000 horsepower. He was right around 800 with the Zora or ZR1 model. This is the first time in a while I've heard another rumor about the engine making 1,000 horsepower. Now, of course, as usual, with the C8 Corvette and any rumors like this, you want to take them all with a grain of salt. I'm not telling any of you guys out there that this is definitely what's going to happen. I'm simply sharing my experience with you guys because, as I've said 100 times, I am just as interested in this car as you are. So every time I read a little bit of information or see new pictures, I want to share them with you guys too, because I know we all share the same passion here. Now, with that said, a lot of this stuff I'm reading definitely sounds like it could be legit. And I'll tell you what, if we get a Corvette that's mid-engine and it makes somewhere around 1,000 horsepower, it is just going to be ridiculously insane. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. If you liked what you saw, give me a big thumbs up. If you have any questions about anything we talked about here today or anything we ever talk about on this channel, feel free to shoot it in the comment section down below or send me an email, horse.power.obsessed@gmail.com. I'm always looking forward to hearing from you guys. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I'd love to have you as part of the Horsepower Obsessed community. And as always, guys, I'll catch you in the next upload.